Welcome to a new guide on this channel, and on this occasion is the Mercury-4 from Cherry Audio. So this is not a review, it's a complete deep dive guide about this synth. So everything on this guide is in chapters. So if you look at the description or the timeline, you can jump to a section or skip the ones you don't want. Now, of course, if you like these guides, like and subscribe, and if you have the money, you can buy me a coffee. Everything is on the description. So let's begin. Right, so the most common place to start is going to be the VCO, which is going to be, the thing that generates the sound. Now, always starting from a default patch, you go right here at the top, you click new, and it's going to give you a default patch. Now, by default, the ensemble, which is the chorus right here, is going to be on. Since I want to show you the waveforms, I'm going to just turn it off. Now, of course, it sounds better with the ensemble, so you can keep it on if you want. Okay, so this is where what it's going to be generating the sound, the VCO. So by default, of course, it's going to be one single oscillator, and you can choose your different waveforms. Of course, you get a saw, and there's a tiny curve right there. Then, of course, you're going to go to a square, and then you have a pulse, which is, a square, but just in a different way. We're going to talk about that in a second. Now, of course, you can go all the way to off, and this will give you no sound. Right, and of course, you have the noise generator, so you can do a little bit of sound design with the noise, if you wish, or you just can, maybe leave the noise on and just, have noise and the oscillator play at the same time. Now, in this case, I'm just going to turn it off. Right, so pretty simple. You get your single oscillator, but of course, you can select the range right here. Right now, we are on the 16th, but if you can go lower and to 8 and then to 4, right? So pretty simple, pretty understandable. Then, of course, at the bottom, you have a sub. Now, this sub, if you go all the way to off on the main oscillator, is going to give you a sub. And this is just sounds a little bit different. And you could, of course, say, okay, so it's a square. Let me go higher. It's a square, but it's a little bit different from the other square. If I turn this one off and I show you this one, it's just very, very different. So the main difference is, of course, this one, it's a little bit darker, have less harmonics in this one. So it's less bright, of course. And of course, this one is a sub. So it's going to be playing one octave lower from whatever we have right here. Now, of course, the main trick is that we need to kind of make a combination of both to get a cool sound. So for now, I'm going to turn the sub off, and I'm going to be talking about this selector that you have right here. So this one is going to be the pulse width. Now, sometimes you're going to see pulse width PWM or pulse width modulation. Well, right here you have a combination of both. Now, this one only works when you are on this waveform, which is the pulse. So by default, you're going to be getting this. So right here, you have 4 different positions to kind of change the width of the waveform. So you are in the 4 right now, but if you go all the way to the 1, it's going to be the narrowest. The second one is going to be a little bit wider. The third one is going to be wider. And the fourth one is the, widest. Cool, right? So pretty simple. Now, right now, if we play this, and I go up and down with the mouse, we're going to be doing a little bit of a manual, pulse width modulation. And this is because right here it says MAN, which is manual. And it's because you're not doing pulse width modulation, you're just changing the width of the pulse. But you can go to mod right here, and whenever you're on mod, this is going to be applying some pulse width modulation. Now, if you're on 1, nothing is going to happen. It's just not even moving. Pretty small. Now, if you go to the next ones, it's going to start, going up and down. And it's going to give you a little bit more. And of course, since it's going to, it's going to be going from narrow to all the way up, the effect is just going to be a little bit more obvious. Right, so of course, you might be thinking, all right, so how can I tune this? Because right now it's just maybe going super fast. Well, right here you have the mod, and you could say, okay, so this is the amount. Well, not really. This is going to be pitch modulation. So if I go to manual and just leave it to off and go to any maybe different waveform, this is the control for the pitch modulation. Of course, if it's all the way down, we're doing nothing, and as I go up, we're just modulating the pitch up and down. Alright, so the mod is for pitch, and right here is going to be enabling the pulse width modulation. Now, of course, who's deciding how fast can we should be going to do the pitch modulation or the pulse width modulation? Well, it's going to be the LFO. And right here, it says this one is going to the LFO and this one is going to the LFO. So this section is deciding how fast we go if we do pulse width modulation or we do, frequency modulation. Let me just maybe go there to pulse width and then do frequency modulation. Right, so pretty simple controls. We can go right now to the VCF, but since the VCF and the VCA, they kind of use the LFO as a modulation source, just like we are doing right here. Maybe it's just a little bit better to learn how the LFO works before we can go to the other sections. All right, so I'm gonna go right here at the top and start with the new patch. Now the LFO is pretty simple. Again, remember we are starting with new patch, and for now I'm just gonna just turn it off. So right now, if I do something like this, we are going to be doing pitch modulation. So right here, you can select how fast you can go. It's going to go slow, or it's going to go super fast. And this will affect everything that uses the LFO as a modulation source. Now, of course, you can click right here, and it's going to sync it to the BPM of your DAW. And you can go and use subdivisions. Notice that now it's not on hertz anymore. If I do right here, it's kind of a free mode. We go up in hertz. Right here, we are just syncing to the BPM. Right. Right now, by default, the LFO is going to be a sine wave, which is okay. But, it would be cool to use different waveforms. If I go to this one at the bottom, notice that the instruction is a little bit different. If I go to this one, it's going to be a ramp, this is going to be a ramp down, and this one is going to be a ramp up. Now let me just go slower so we can hear it. This is ramping down, and the other one is going to be ramping up. It's going down and up. And then we have, the pulse width or the square waveform, which is going to be kind of an on and off kind of a sound. Right, pretty simple, right? Just pretty simple. For now, I'm just going to go back to a sine wave. So one thing that this has, the Mercury or the Jupiter-4, this is kind of the emulation of that, and then the Juno and all, that kind of a vibe, you get the delay time, which is something pretty common on some synthesizers. You don't get it in them all, but you get it in this one. So the delay time, it means that it's going to await an amount of time before the full modulation kicks in. So right now I'm just gonna maybe go there. And as soon as I play a key, the modulation will just begin. And we are doing pitch modulation right now. Now the delay time is going to be how long it's going to take for the full amplitude of the LFO to take effect. So it's just kind of a slowly introduce the LFO. Now this of course is a time control, and you can go from 1 millisecond, which is pretty much nothing, all the way and right here to 19,000 milliseconds. If you don't know how milliseconds work in seconds, 1,000 is going to be 1 second. So if we have 19,000, it's going to be 19 seconds, which is a lot. But if I do something like this, like 6 or 7 seconds, I'm going to be playing key, and notice that the LFO will not start kicking in fully. It's going to slowly be introduced, and then it's starting. Until, of course, we reach the 7 seconds, and it's the full modulation. Of course, you can go and do less. Right, so that's how it works. You can apply a little bit of delay to slowly kind of introduce the LFO. Whenever you play something, or whenever you select a modulation, you go to a modulation and you use the LFO as a modulation source. So one more thing that you get right here, which at this point on pretty much, I want to say all, but a lot of the Cherry Audio synthesizers is something pretty common, is to disable the delay time when you do the mod wheel. And this kind of makes sense. So whenever you play something, of course, if you have this enabled, it's going to take a certain amount of time before the full modulation kicks in. We know this. Now, when you enable mod wheel, this one is going to be disabled. And when you play something, now you can control the delay time, or how you introduce, not the delay time, but how you introduce the LFO. Right now, my mod wheel is all the way down, and if I slowly start going up, notice that, and I'm going up right now, is going to go and enter full modulation, and now I'm going to go up, down. And of course, we can control it on demand without, of course, waiting for the delay time to kick in. And it makes sense, why, having both on when you enable the mod wheel, right? So when you disable this, this is going to be, of course, be used. And when you enable this, this is going to be controlling that. So then you have the norm and the wide right here. So the norm and the wide, it's a little bit weird. Now, if you go to the documentation of the synth, which is super funny, the guy who wrote the manual, it's a funny guy. The guy, or maybe she or he, I don't really know, throws a lot of jokes and funny facts about the Jupiter-4. And it's a pretty easy and funny read. Now, it explains that originally you had other functions with the Jupiter-4 that you don't have right here because, of course, back in the day, you could store some patches, but it didn't work the way it works today now with, a modern synthesizer. It would save the patches in a very weird and limited way. So one of these sections was, a section where you could store the rate and you could store right here how, this goes. But then, of course, you could offset it with a different control that you don't see right here. If you go and you take a look at the original, you can have some sections that are not here. Now, of course, since nowadays we can store or we can, save as many patches as we want, adding that section will be kind of a pointless, right? It makes sense. Why adding something that makes no sense? Since we can store many patches, this one, they kind of kept this one, but it works a little bit different. The wide is going to be kind of a duplicating or kind of a make the rate faster. So let me just go something slow, maybe right there. I'm going to be playing something that it's not maybe super fast. Just go that way. As soon as I go wide, it's going to multiply whatever rate we have right here, and it's going to go faster. Of course, if I go slower, this is going to go that way. But if I go to normal, it's going to be super slow. So what they did, they kind of emulated the controls of the original synthesizer on a very specific position. But that's what it does. It's going to be kind of a multiplying whatever value you have as a rate. So you can go, normal, or you can go faster. That's it. All right, so we have the VCO, the noise, the LFO down. Let's go and talk about the VCF. Of course, I'm going to start with the new patch, and in this case, I'm going to keep the ensemble on because it sounds super beautiful with the ensemble off. Off it sounds like that. So what we can do with the VCF, of course, we're going to be cutting frequencies. So if you start right here and gonna maybe leave it right there, we can see right here how much we are doing. So you can cut the low frequencies. If I add a sub, we are going to be getting more low frequencies. And with the high pass, we're just going to be cutting the lows. That's what it does. So this is going to be a 6 dB per octave kind of a cut. Just not super aggressive, but enough to, get the sub a little bit out of the way. Right, so then you have your low pass section, and you have your cutoff right here. This is what we'll do. It will cut high frequencies. Right, and this is a 24 dB per octave. Now, maybe you're thinking, okay, dude, this is very obvious. Maybe you have some experience with the synthesizers, but again, this is a family show. I'm just kind of targeting all audiences. Maybe this is your first synth. And remember that at the bottom, everything is timeline. So if this is a little bit boring, you can advance it or maybe move on to a different section. Right. So, of course, when we cut off frequencies, we're going to be cutting frequencies. And notice that this one is a lot more aggressive than this one. Because this one is a 6 dB per octave and this one is a 24. It's just a lot, the slope is just much more aggressive. Right, so I'm gonna maybe leave it right there. Now, then you have your resonance control, and this is a ladder filter. So as soon as we go up on the resonance, we are gonna be getting that self-oscillation, which is super cool. But notice that when you go up in resonance, the lower frequencies that we have right here are going to go down. And this is something very normal with with ladder filters. The low frequencies are going to be going down. So if you're thinking, there's something wrong with mine, no, it's just the way the filter works. All right, so that's it, that's pretty easy. All right, so So if we keep going, we have the keyboard follow. And for now, let me just maybe do something like this. It's not a very pleasing sound, but this is just gonna expose what I want to show you. So notice that I'm maybe playing this key, and we have a peak right here. We can really see it. So when we cut frequencies, we cut from the high point, we cut the high frequencies. And when we play keys, the cutoff is not going to move. So this means that some low frequencies are going to be, we're going to be able to hear them because we are cutting the highs. But when I play high frequencies, we are really cutting them. So we are not going to get a lot. We get less and less and less. And notice that maybe right here, we can see the peak. If I go up on the keys, the peak stays right there. So this one is the key track. And it's something very kind of a standard on pretty much any synthesizer. So right now it's on 0. So it means that whenever we play keys, the keyboard or the synthesizer will not adjust the cutoff to the keys we are playing. Now, of course, if I go all the way, and just to show you how it works, the cutoff, this one, the keyword follow, what it will do, it will just move the cutoff frequencies based on the keys we play. So if we play higher frequencies, the peak is going to move up and it's going to move down. It's going to be moving the cutoff. So if I play low frequencies, notice that the peak is right there. And as I go up on the keys, notice that the peak is moving. And this is because the keyword follow is adjusting the cutoff. So we can hear pretty much everything that we are playing, including the higher keys. That's, the main purpose of the keyword follow or the key tracking. Now, of course, if you go all the way to 3, it's just very aggressive. So you can select maybe 2, and the movement is just going to be less and less. And if you go to 1, it's going to be not a lot, but it's just going to still adjust the cutoff. Right? Pretty simple. If you go to nothing, it will just, stay right there and it will not move. So let's talk about the next thing, which is going to be the mod. Maybe I'm going to be not going that resonant. I'm going to maybe leave it right here. Something, maybe that's too much. Yeah, I'm going to leave it right there. Something maybe like that. Okay. So the mod is going to be pre-wired to the LFO. This works just like the mod we have right here or the pulse width modulation. If I go up on the LFO, it's going to start, modulating the cutoff. It's like me doing something like this. Now, of course, the LFO can go really aggressive, or we can go down and to do less. And remember, this is the one, handling how fast we go and how we modulate. Right, so again, just pretty simple controls. We can do a lot, or we can do just a tiny bit. Right, so the next one, the next modulation, and notice that all of this is about modulation. It's going to be the envelope mod. So if you, again, maybe you're starting, so I'm going to be doing a little bit of explaining right here. What we can do right here, we can use this envelope to provide an instruction to this LFO. Now, of course, the mod is an LFO. It's a motion that, goes up and down, or, just like this. But it will, of course, while I'm playing a key, it will not stop. It's just a constant motion. Now that's what the LFO does. Now if I go all the way down, what happens if I don't want a constant motion? I just want to maybe play a key and move and do something like this, like we are doing right now. Right, so that's going to be the envelope. So of course this one is going to decide how much of this envelope we have right here should be modulating the cutoff. Well, for now, I'm just gonna leave it right there. So of course, if you go all the way up, you're using pretty much the full amplitude of the envelope. If you go in betweens, you're gonna be using a little bit. So, okay. Now, if you don't know how an envelope works, it's pretty simple. You have pretty much, in this case, an ADSR, which is an attack, decay, sustain, release. Now, the attack and the decay are time-based knobs, and the sustain is going to be a level. All right, so let me just start from the beginning. Again, maybe you're learning, and this is actually very useful if you're learning. If you're confused with what an ADSR is, this is kind of a precious information because pretty much in any synthesizer, you have an ADSR envelope. Okay, so remember what we want to do. We want to play a key and we want to modulate this knob or this slider up and then down when we play a key. So this is going to do that. It's going to trigger, move it up and move it down. Now, of course, we need to decide how we go up and how we go down. So the attack is going to be how long it's going to take for this knob to go to some point and then go back. So notice that as I move it, it says seconds. So of course, this is a time-based kind of a value. So if I go up, it means that if we have something about like, I don't know, 1.9, it's going to be almost 2 seconds. And this is going to take 2 seconds to go to fall and then maybe go back or maybe stay there or do something. But again, it's how it starts. So if I play something, notice that the sound will start some point and then it's just going to be sliding this up. Now, I'm going to do it with the mouse. If I play a key, I'm going to play the key and hold it. So notice that the sound dies. When it reaches the kind of the full amplitude of the envelope, it just dies. Now, of course, this is how we go up, how long it's going to take to go up. Now, of course, what we want to do now, I want to decide how we go down. Well, that's going to be the decay. And this is a time-based control. We can decide how long it's going to take. And notice the values. This is just much longer than the attack. And if I go maybe something, maybe there, I'm just going to put it right there. This is how long the decay is going to take to go down to the same position where we started off. So if I go down, it's going to stay there and then slowly go back. And notice I'm still holding a key. Of course, after a while, the sound is going to die, but I'm still holding the key. And it dies very slowly, but I'm still holding it. Okay, so maybe, you don't want to do this. You don't want to modulation that goes up and then goes down and then dies. You want to maybe have a sustained sound. Let me just do it a little bit faster. Maybe not that fast. I'm gonna go and maybe do it something like that. It's gonna go up and then down and then the sound dies. Of course, if you're still holding a key, maybe you want to sustain the sound. Well, that's gonna be the sustain. Now, the sustain is not a time knob, is a level based control. Notice that we have a percentage. So this means that if we go up on this one and then we go down, maybe this one is going to stay somewhere in between. So if I go up, it's going to go down, but notice that I'm still holding a key, but the sound, the modulation will not go all the way down and die. It's just going to stay somewhere in between. Well, this is going to be the sustain. Where are we going to be staying or sustaining? If I go down, it's going to go up and sustain lower. If I go up, it's going to go up and sustain maybe right here at the top. Notice it's just sustaining right there. Now, you need to remember that when you go all the way up on the sustain, you're kind of disabling the decay. You don't have a decay stage. You play a key, you go all the way up, and you sustain right there at the top. Alright, so for now, I'm just gonna maybe go and do something like that, which is, a little bit obvious. Alright. So now, of course, we are playing a key, and I'm holding it, and I'm sustaining it. What's gonna happen when I release the key? So when I release the key, the sound dies. And if I play the key again, we go back, we go to sustain, we release the key and the sound dies. Maybe we don't want to do this. We want to slow, dying of the note. We want to slowly fade it out. So that's going to be the release. What's going to happen when we release the key? So just to hear how the release is going to fade the modulation, we need to have some release on the VCA right here. So if all this is just all the way down, we are not going to be able to hear anything. So make sure that you have something right here, something like that. So of course, right now I play, it's going to go down, it's going to sustain, I release the keys, and it dies. Maybe I don't want this. I'm going to be moving this up, and notice it's on milliseconds. So this is another kind of a time-based instruction. And again, you can go really high and, 20 seconds is a lot. But maybe I'm going to do something about a second or something like that. So I'm going to play a key. It's going to go down. It's going to sustain. And when I release the keys, it's going to slowly die. Now, if you want to make it slower, you can make sure that you have a slow time right here. Gonna go right there, and I'm gonna release the keys right about now. And the sound slowly fades out. Alright, so this is how an ADSR envelope works. I'm gonna maybe go right there. And I'm gonna go to slower time so we can have something fast. Right. So then you have the velocity control. Now, right now, it's all the way to 0. So it means if I play a key soft, it's going to trigger that modulation. Let me just go back again and do something slow. I'm going to play a key softly, and it's going and doing the full modulation of the envelope. And this is, again, we are all the way up on the mod envelope. Right. And if I play harder, it's just the same modulation. And if I play soft, it's the same modulation. So this one is going to be listening to the velocity of your keys. So if you play harder or you play softer, it's going to affect how the mod envelope is going to modulate this control. So now if I play soft, we have almost no modulation. And I'm playing it, but it's just very softly. And if I play hard, it's going to be, it's going to go to full modulation. If I play something in between, it's just going to do it. So you have different kind of levels. If you play soft, you play harder. So yeah, this is going to be listening to the velocity and is going to modulate the cutoff on a different way. Now, of course, you can select something in between. Right now, maybe 10 is maybe too much. I need to really press those keys to get it to modulate. Maybe something in between is going to be a little bit more useful. Then again, that's the way it works. It's going to be listening to the velocity of your keyboard. Right, so now we need to talk about the VCA, and we have a lot of the parts right here. We have them covered. The mod, what's going to be the mod? Well, the mod is going to be, and let me just go maybe back to a default patch and leave the ensemble on, and maybe do a little bit of cutoff. There we go. So the mod on the VCA is going to be the volume. The VCA is about volumes, how the sound is going to go through this envelope and go out. And of course, the ADSR works the same way. Now, in this case, the mod is going to be the LFO. And of course, it's not going to modulate the pitch. It's not going to modulate the cutoff. It's just going to go up and down in volume. So if you think about this is a tremolo. If I go all the way up to the mod, notice that the sound is going up and down. And of course, this follows the rate of the LFO. So it's a tremolo. If you go super fast, you're almost getting to, to that modulation territory. That kind of FM. This is not FM, it's AM, but, a different topic. Right, so that's the whole point. You can modulate the amplitude, or the gain in this case. Let me just go to normal. The volume, how it goes up and down. Right. Pretty easy to understand. Then of course you have right here your ADSR, and this one works the same way than this one. So once you learn how this works, you pretty much understand all ADSRs. It's okay. So, but this one is not going to be controlling the cutoff. It's going to control how the sound goes out. So right now, if I do something like this, all the sustain up and everything down, I play a key and it's just gonna die right away. So that's how an AR pretty much works. Now, of course, you can maybe go provide a little bit of attack, maybe a little bit of decay, maybe a little bit less of sustain and a release. And now, of course, we're gonna have different sounds. I'm doing a lot of release. So, of course, when I play keys, they are kind of a sustaining. And, of course, they are dying. It's taking them a long time to die. So if you play a chord, we get that cool sound. So again, this has pretty much the same idea of how it works right here. How long it's going to take for the sound to go to full amplitude and then it's going to die. How, of course, it's going to go up and then go down to full silence. And of course, it's taking a long time because it's 12 seconds. Now, maybe we want to sustain the sound at some point. So it's going to go up, then it's going to go down and sustain at some point. But when I release the keys, it's just going to die right away. So the release is just going to provide, the instruction of how long it's going to take to go to full silence. Now the velocity right here works the same way on the VCF, but this will, listen to the velocity. And I'm gonna go really aggressive so we can hear the difference. If I play very softly, notice that we have kind of a less volume. It's pretty quiet. If I play hard, we get full. Again, you just can, select somewhere in between right there. And if you play soft, it's gonna be quieter. And if you play hard, it's gonna be much louder. That's how the velocity works. Now, if you're all the way down on 0, whatever you do is gonna be always the same amplitude. I'm gonna start with the new patch back again. So all the way to the left, you have the volume of your synthesizer. Now, this is the overall volume of the whole synth. So if I go all the way down, we get nothing. And if I go up, notice that, of course, you're gonna be kind of a clipping. So, but this is the master volume. But all the way to the right, you have the level of the synthesizer. So this one is going to go down in volume, and this one is the volume for the VCA. So if you go all the way down, you're not really going all the way down in volume. And this was a feature on the synthesizer, on the original one, to keep all the patches in check with the volume so you could adjust them. Now, the cool thing with this one is that when you go up and you have maybe a more complex sound, let me just bring something like that and do a little bit more. And I'm gonna go down in volume. I'm gonna go all the way down and it's gonna start distorting a little bit. And that's, the whole point of this level. Just to get it to clip. There you go. Notice that it's much smoother, and now we are just kind of clipping it a little bit. So that's kind of the main point of this. If I, of course, play more keys, it's just going to be a little bit more obvious. Now this is distorting. There you go. It's crushing it very hard. And notice it's still clipping. If I go down, we're going to do less, and now we get, we don't get that kind of that distortion. If I go up, we're going to start getting it. And there we go. So yeah, so this the purpose of this level is just to introduce a little bit of distortion, which is something super, super nice. Okay, so right here you have the tuning and you have the drift. Now, of course, and I'm starting with a new patch, the tuning is just going to make your sound sharp or flat. It's just going to do that. This is by cents, so it's 50 cents. So you cannot, go to 12 semitones up. This is just, go in sharp and flat. Pretty simple. Now, of course, since you can play up to 16 voices, you can make chords. And on analog gear, what happens is that when the equipment gets a little bit old until you do maintenance, the oscillators naturally are going to be drifting from each other. So you're going to get a really kind of analog detuning. This is something very common. Of course, if you go all the way up to the drift, notice that the oscillators, they sound a little bit detuned. And if I go all the way down, it's right there in tune. Something very common, it's a nice thing that you get the drift right here. So I'm going to go to the tape echo. And for now, I'm just going to maybe disable the ensemble and go back to a default patch. So the tape echo, this one, it's of course based on the Roland Space Echo, kind of a vintage, holy grail type of delay. And it works with different heads. That's why you have heads right here. So of course, right here you have the control, and when you turn it on, and I'm going to go all the way to the 1, as soon as we play it, we can hear that we have some repetitions, and they're just kind of fast. As soon as I play it, we get them. And of course, the heads are positioned on the unit, the old one, on a different position. So if you change with this selector to the head number 2, the second head is further. So the delay is going to kick in, a little bit later. And the third one is going to be the same thing. I'm going to be playing something. It's going to be a little bit of time. I'm going to go down on the intensity right here. And if you go right here, you can kill the sound right here by going to MIDI panic. I'm going to play it. And notice it takes a lot more time than the number 1. Right? It's just different rates. All right. So that's actually the whole point of the different heads that you have right here. Now, of course, you have more positions. The 1, the 2, and the 3 will go and toggle between the 2, 1, 2, and 3. But the other ones are going to be playing a combination of the different heads that, of course, have different times. So when you play them, you get a combination and different textures, you know? I'm going to go right there, and it's going to be the 2 and the 3. And then it will go to 6 and, 6 is going to be the 1 and the 3 combination. There's going to be one fast and the other one is just, a little slower. If I go to the 7, it's going to be all the 3 heads at the same time. Right. So of course, depends on the combination, depends on the, on the sound that you can get. Now, then you have the repeat rate, and this is kind of the delay time. Now, if you go all the way down, and I play something, let me do Beady Panic. Notice that's kind of slow, but it's not super slow. It's 700 milliseconds, just so you don't get, really long repetitions. Of course, if I go right here, let me do Beady Panic. It's going to take a long time. And there you go. There it goes slow. Now, of course, this depends on how much you do right here. And for now, I'm just going to go, to the 1. So since this is a plugin, you can sync to your tempo, and you can use subdivisions. It's going to be a lot more useful when tracking. Right. So then, of course, you have the intensity. Now, the intensity is going to be, this is the delay time, all right? So then the intensity is like the feedback of your delay. The normal name is feedback. So if right now I play something, of course, that's going to be the feedback. But if I go all the way up, you're going to start getting this until, of course, you go down. Notice it's going to go really loud. Now, of course, this is kind of and I'm going to go to free mode. It's kind of an analog, right? That's the whole point. And for now, I'm just going to go and maybe do a combination. I like the 1 and the 3. And you can go up on the intensity and even go up on the rate, and it's going to give you that. Right, so that's the sound. Now, of course, right here you have your echo volume, and this what it will do. It will pretty much give you the full echo. It's gonna go up on the volume of the repetitions, or you're gonna go down on the volume of the repetitions. Depends on, of course, what you want to do. Now, on the vintage unit, the old space echo, the reverb and the kind of a tape echo were on the same kind of a panel. That's why you get this green kind of a enclosure. And it's because the reverb lived within the same unit. Now, when you selected mode, you could select just the delay or just the reverb or a combination of the delay and the reverb. You had a lot more positions, but right here, of course, makes no sense. Of course, this is a plugin. Now, in this case, the reverb, what you had on the original unit is a spring type of delay. And that's, the first position. So if I play something, it sounds like a spring reverb, of course. So you get the decay times, and as you go up on the decay, it's going to take a long more time to decay. And right here, you can select your reverb volume. So you have other modes like the plate and the hall, and it's nice that they decided to not give us just the spring, because a spring reverb is a very particular type of effect that maybe doesn't work on all the different, all the different type of sounds, much less maybe with synthesizers. Maybe you want to use a plate or maybe a hall. It's just going to give you, that type of sound, which is maybe more suitable for most of synth sounds. So spring is something that I really like with guitars, maybe. So, of course, you have a long decay time and, of course, the reverb volume. But notice that you have, and I'm going to make it shorter, you have a bass and treble. So if I go all the way up on the bass and all the way up on the treble, notice that our sound is not changing. What is changing is the reverb sound, of course. If I go all the way down, it's going to affect the reverb. Same thing with the spring. And this is something that you will need to adjust because maybe the sound is too bright and it's gonna be affecting the reverb. So you can just go down to the treble if you want to make it darker. Same thing with the bass. Right, so let's talk about the bender section. And this one, it's special. So now we are entering into the more kind of a, special, very dedicated to the synth or the emulation of the synth section, like the bender, the transpose, and Portamento, which is not super special. But this one, it's very special, very particular to the synth, just like the Arpeggio section. Okay, so I'm going to go back to a default patch. And if I play something, of course, we get pretty much nothing. So right here, notice it says bend, then it says off, and then it says LFO. And same thing right here. And it's because the different positions are going to give you a different combinations when you do a bend. So this works with the bend wheel. Okay, so if I go right here and set it to off, and I play something, and I move my bend wheel, nothing is going to happen because I'm disabling this. Now, of course, when we use a bend wheel, what will happen is that it will, pitch it will go up in pitch or down in pitch with the bend. So by default, if you go right here to bend, this is what we'll do. And notice it says VCO, VCF, and then VCA. So VCO, it means that it will just go up and down in pitch, right? Just like a normal bend wheel. So if I play and I go up, it's going to go up and it's going to go down. Simple enough. Now, then, of course, it says bender sensitivity. And, of course, I'm going to go all the way down, all the way up, and see what happens. If I go up, of course, now it's going to go a lot, way up or way down. So this is what it does. It's going to decide how, aggressive you go up and down. In this case, we are doing it with a pitch. But on the VCO, what you can do with the bend, instead of just going up and down on pitch, you can do it with an LFO. And this is kind of what stands out from this bender section. If I play something, and notice it says a bender LFO amount, I'm going to keep it on 10. If I go up on my bend, what it does, just going to go and apply some LFO to the pitch. And if I go, sorry for that, if I go right here, we are pretty much doing something like this. But we are doing it with the bend wheel. If I go up and I go down, in this case, nothing happens. But if I go up, it's going to do that. Now, you can decide how much of this you can do right here because, maybe it's too aggressive. So I'm doing almost nothing. So let me just do a little bit more. There we go. Just not so aggressive. And if you think about this, you have your common kind of a bend, or you could do it with another LFO, and you can have combinations of different things right here. So you can do the same thing with a VCF. If I go right here to the bend and I play something, let me just go down on the cutoff. So we are cutting a lot of frequencies. If I play something and I go up on the bend, it's just going to open the filter. Just going to move the cutoff up. Now, of course, how aggressive this is going to be decided by the bender sensitivity. And for now, I'm just going to maybe keep them right here. So if I go up, it's just going to go up. And if I go down, it's just going to cut more. So we are just modulating the cutoff with the bend. Also, what we can do, we can go the other way and go to the LFO. So now when I go up, it's just going to do the modulation with the LFO. And we get the same thing with the VCA. I can go to bend, and this is just going to go up and down in volume with the bend wheel. Pretty simple. But also you can go to the LFO and do it with a tremolo. Maybe it's not that obvious. Let me just go all the way up right here. There we go. Okay, so with this one, you can use, or you can kind of create different sounds, because you can go up in pitch, but also maybe do a little bit of LFO, and then go maybe to LFO on the VCA. And when you do a bend, you can create really cool sounds. And maybe with some effect, maybe a tape echo, something like that. Maybe a little bit of reverb with maybe a decay. Right? You kind of create different combinations of different sounds. Maybe do an LFO right here and maybe a bend right there and keep the LFO on the amplitude. Right? So that's the whole idea of the bender. And it's really cool. It's really cool because sometimes you just get the pitch. You know, you can bend or maybe go up and down in pitch and that's it. But this one you can do a little bit more. Right? So then you get your Portamento. Portamento works with the poly a little bit better if we go to the number 2. So for that, we're going to talk about this later. For now, I'm going to go to number 2. So I'm going to turn it on because if not, it's just not going to do anything. And what we need to do, I'm going to go up in Portamento so we can really hear what it's doing. So the Portamento is the glide control. So when I play a key, I'm just going to glide or slide to that note. And when I play a new key, you're just going to slide from the previous note. If you play closed keys, of course, the travel is just going to be not that much. But if I play a very low key, it's going to travel all the way down. And if I play a high key, it's going to travel all the way up. And notice that right now we are holding several keys. So we are working on poly mode. If we use mono, it's going to be a little bit different, but still we are going to be traveling from key to the next one. We're going to glide or slide to the next one. And we're going to go back to this one when we reach to the assign mode. And for now, I'm just going to turn it off. And right here, of course, if you play a key, you can transpose up or you can transpose down. Really easy. Okay, so let's talk about the arpeggio and then the assign mode. This one is really special on this synthesizer. So this one works also with the trigger. So let me go first to the trigger. So it says trigger, and it's a little bit confusing, and it also says this on the manual, and it's pretty funny actually how it's explaining how this works. So this one, notice it says ARP and then SNH rate and then VCF SNH. So this is just a sample and hold, which is a random for to modulate the VCF. And then is the rate of the ARP if we are using an ARP. It's that simple. And it says on the manual that it says trigger because that's what it says on the original hardware, but it should be called, ARP rate and sample and hold or something like that. So this basically what it does is going to, and for now I'm going to maybe go right here. This is just going to be random. That's how, sample and hold. It works in a different way, but that's what it does. It's just going to randomly go up and down. How fast? Well, it's going to be the rate. Of course, you can sync it to your DAW. Again, you're just doing random. Now, the other use of this one, besides doing sample and hold, random on the cutoff, is going to be using it. If I go all the way down, now this is going to be working as the rate of the arpeggio. All right, so let's talk about the arpeggiator. It's a little bit weird, but it's actually great. It's very creative. And this is how it works on the original unit. So it's not something that they, they implemented right here on this plugin. It's something that it works like that on the actual synth. And for now, we're going to start with something simple and just going to take you all the way. Now, notice that when you go right here, you click, or maybe going to go back to a default patch, you tap on one of these options. Whatever it is that you have right here is just going to be deselected. And it's because if you're using the arpeggio, you're always kind of a mono. So if you're doing unison and you go and you want to do an arpeggio with unison, you can't. So whatever, if you have something selected right here, this is just going to be, disabling whatever you do on the assign mode, and it's straight to mono. All right. So of course, the main idea of an ARP is that you play a key, or you maybe make a chord, and it's just going to go through the different keys that you're playing. Now, on this synthesizer, it works a little bit weird. Now, I'm going to go and do it with the mouse. Now, right here, we have the last octave of the synthesizer. We have another octave right here, another one right here, and another one right here. And what we are going to be doing is doing an arpeggio by going up. Okay, so if I play a key, maybe I'm going to be playing a D. And of course, this is going to be the rate of the ARP. Maybe it's too slow. Let me do something like that. Okay. So I'm playing a single key. So what it should do, maybe, is just play this single key, but that's not what's happening. So what it's doing is playing this key and an octave higher. Right? And we can easily hear that. So it's playing two different ranges, this octave and the next one. Simple. And this is by default how it works. Now, what happens if I go right here and play a D but an octave lower on this part of the keyboard? If I play this, notice it's not doing the same thing. Right here is doing 1, 2, and then back. And on this one it's doing 1, 2, 3, back. So it's kind of going through 3 different ranges, 3 different octaves. Alright, so, it's a little bit weird. What happens if I go and play this key? So it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4 now. And if you're wondering, okay, so how, it works like this on the, yeah, it works like this. This is the way it works. So if you are playing a key right here, it's going to go through this and the next octave. But if you're playing right here, it's going to go to 3, and this one's going to go to 4. Now on the manual, it says that if you go right here, it's going to go to 5. And it's just, I couldn't get it to work. It's just going to 4 different ranges. Maybe it's I'm doing something wrong, or maybe it's maybe wrong on the manual. Could be, I don't know. But on the manual says that if I'm going here, it's going to do this plus 5, plus 4, which is going to be 5 in total. Maybe I'm just misinterpreted. But this is doing the same thing that we are doing on this octave. Is 1, 2, 3, 4, and back. So yeah, right here we're going to 4. 4, this one is going to be 3, and this one is going to be 2. Now, maybe you're thinking, what is the point of doing this? Well, the thing is that when you play, and I'm going to be playing this key, and we know that we have one single, we're going to go 1 octave up. The octave I'm playing, this key, and the next octave. But now, if I play a key that belongs to this, remember that this one is going to do 3. So by playing this and then playing lower, you can have different combinations of different ranges. So this one, this D, is going to go to 2, but the other ones are going to be a little bit different. Because this section I'm playing right here and this one are going to go to 3, and this one is going to go to 2. So you start getting different combinations. Now, if I play a low C, this one I'm playing right here, this one is going to go to 4. So you're going to start getting, different combinations of different ranges. It's not your standard kind of a arpeggiator, which is actually cool. Now, of course, right now it's really slow and it's super boring. So I'm gonna maybe go faster. Right, so you can play on different parts of the keyboards and it's going to go to different ranges and just going to create a weird combination of all of this. Now, of course, right now it's going up. What happens if you go down? You can go down if you wish. You can go up and down, which is going to go up and down. You can go random. And of course, it goes random. And then we have something that says top note. What the F is this? Right, so I'm going to go back to a default patch and I'm going to be talking about this top note. It's a little bit weird. Now, of course, since the arpeggiator is a little bit weird, you have this, and the way on the manual, how it explains everything, is that, of course, on the synthesizer, you have a very limited range. On the hardware unit, you have a very limited range in terms of how many keys you can play and how many octaves you get. But on the plugin land, you can go as much up or as much down as your MIDI keyboard lets you go. And of course, you can you have a kind of a full range on this synthesizer, on this plugin, but not on the hardware. So what you can do, if I go and play this one, for now I'm going to go to up, and I play this, we know, maybe not that fast, maybe something like that. If I play this, we know that we play this octave and the next one. And it's because, of course, the synthesizer, the hardware, can do this octave and can play 1 octave up. So it's going to this and, 1 up, because it can, but it cannot go higher. Now, what the top note is going to do is going to let you decide what is the last key or, the last position on your keyboard. You're going to kind of do that. So if I do this and I select maybe this C, this range, and I make this my last or my top note, if I go and play something right here, notice that nothing is playing, nothing is happening. It is because the synth thinks or, now knows, or is assuming that this is my last note, the last note I can play. So this one is going to be able, we're going to be able to play it, but all this not going to happen. So now if I go to this range, I play something, notice that we are not getting the same behavior than before. We are not going to this octave and the next one. And it's because, remember, we said that the top note is this one. There is no one more octave up than this one. So it's just only playing on this one. So let me, if I do something right here and you want to do maybe kind of a normal arpeggio or something like that, it's gonna go and do it because this is your top note. It cannot go higher. So it's gonna do 1, 2, 3. Now, of course, if you go down, it's gonna do 1 and 2 because this, this range you can play it, that octave. If I go lower, it's gonna do 1, 2, and 3. So this top note pretty much informs the synthesizer what is the last key you can play. So, of course, when you play chords, you can decide when to go up or if you want to go up. And by default, of course, it's going to be 96. You can leave it right there if you don't care. So the arpeggiator, it's a little bit weird, but it's really, really creative when you get to use it because it's not your standard arpeggiator. If you want to use a very standard arpeggiator, you have your DAW, right? You always have a plugin to do this. But, having this kind of a weird behavior that actually is kind of new to me, it's actually kind of creative. It's really cool and creative. All right, so let's talk about the last thing, which is the assign mode. And this actually, it's a lot easier than it looks. I'm going to go back to a default patch, and we're going to start there. I'm going to start all the way down on the unison 1. So unison, what it means, if you don't know, you are going to be stacking different voices, a certain amount of voices on top of each other. So this is going to give you this bigger than life kind of a sound. If I play something, notice that we get that kind of a beehive kind of a sound. If I go to poly, which is the default mode, we just get one single voice in this case. So in this case, what we are doing, we are using the number of voices. So in this case, what we are doing when we go to unison, we are using the number of voices. So if you're doing 8, when I play a single key, we are stacking 8 different voices on top of each other, and then we are detuning them. So we are getting this sound. And if I go all the way down, we are detuning less. So we get this kind of a phasey sound because we have 8 different voices doing the same thing on top of each other. Now the drift, of course, is going to play a part right here. It works just like the detune. We are detuning voices. So if I do no drift and no detune, does it sound a little bit phasey? And it's because all voices are pretty much on the same spot. So, I'm going to do a little bit of drift, but you just can detune the voices and get, this, kind of a big sound. So right here, the number of voices matter. You're doing 8, but you can do 4, or you can do 2 unison, which is not going to be that big because you're doing 2 unison, 2 voices. Then you're going to go to 4, it's going to get louder because now you're doing 4. And as you go up, it's going to get louder and then louder. So you can do this up to 16. Now 16 is just maybe a bit too much for me. But that's how the unison 1 works. But you have a 2. Now this is because the unison 1 is mono. You can do 1 single key at a time. So if I play something and I play something new, that new is going to dispose whatever note you were playing before. So the way it works, the synthesizer in terms of note priority is going to be the last note priority. That's going to be the default behavior. So if I play one note and I play a key higher, it's going to dispose whatever I was holding. Right? Now we can do it up, or if I play a low key, is going to be playing whatever new note I'm playing. Now, of course, in unison 1, we are stacking voices. What happens with the unison 2? What's the difference? So the unison 1 is mono, one single key at a time. Maybe not mono, but it's just one single key at a time. But this one, it's going to be chords. You can make a chord. Now, you have a limited amount of voices, so you can do up to 16. Now, of course, if you are using unison, it's going to divide the amount of voices that you can do, depends on how many keys you're playing, right? So let me give you an example. I'm going to go to 4. So if I play a note, one single key, I'm pressing this one, a C. So right now we're doing 4 voices, and we are stacking them on top of this key. Now, if I do a new key, now everything is divided. This key is going to do 2 voices because we are using 4, and this one is going to do, of course, 2. Now, if we add more keys, like a third and a fourth, what really we are doing is we are doing poly, because we only have 4 voices. Now, of course, they sound detuned because we are detuning them. But you're essentially you're using a poly. That's pretty much what you're doing. So if you want to do more, you need to use more voices, right? That's kind of makes sense. So now if I do 1, maybe let me detune. It's going to do 8 on one key. Let me do this. And if I do this, it's going to do 4 and 4 because I'm playing 2 keys. And then, of course, notice that the volume goes down because it's, again, dividing. Now, you can do up to a 16 if you are going to be playing big chords. That's, what the unison means. Now, then you have the mono mode, and the mono mode is just mono. That's it. You can play one single key at a time. So if I play something and play a new key, it's just going to dispose whatever I'm holding and play the last note I'm playing. Pretty easy. So then you have poly, and by default, when you go to a new patch, this is the poly mode. It's, what you have by default. So poly, you can play as many keys as you wish within, the number of voices. So you can do up to 8 right here, but you can do up to 16. So then you have the poly 2, and it's a little bit confusing, let's say, but it's actually really simple. So poly 2 is the same as poly 1. The thing is that when you use poly 1, this is not really optimized to use the Portamento. But the poly 2 is the same as poly 1, but it's optimized to use with the Portamento. So it works a little bit better. That is the only difference. Number 2, optimized to use it with Portamento. Number 1 is not optimized for Portamento. That's pretty much it. All right, so I'm going to go back to a default patch, and we are pretty much done right here. We have the chord mode. This one, what it will do, when you click it, is awaiting for you, when it's blinking, of course, is awaiting for you to play a chord. So now if I do a minor, C minor, it's kind of storing that in memory. So now if I play one single key, it's just going to be playing that chord. Really simple. If I go to a different key, it's going to transpose it. Right. So that's it. That's the chord mode. It's just going to store. Of course, you can play whatever chord you want and then, transpose it. But that's it. Now, right here, you have the hold. And the hold is something very simple. Whenever you play a key, it's going to hold it for you. So if I play a key, it's going to hold it. Now, since you have a lot of voices, if you start, stacking, you're holding, it's going to get, pretty big. So whenever you hold, you need to kind of take into account what you're doing. In this case, maybe you want to limit it to 4. So I can do only 4. So I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 4. And the next one is going to be kind of disposing the oldest one. We are not going to get a big mess of voices. Again, and the hold, it's pretty useful, of course, when you do an arpeggio, right? So if you want to play something, I'm going to play something, and I'm going to release it. I'm not playing it. The hold is holding it for me. All right. Now, one more thing I need, I kind of already told you about this, but it says on the manual, and it's kind of a big in bold right there in bold, and it says that when you're using the arpeggio, if you are using an assign mode and you go and you want to use an arpeggio, it's going to disable whatever assign mode you have selected. So if you use arpeggio, is mono. You cannot use unison and arpeggio. So that's it pretty much. That's the kind of the whole synthesizer. So, of course, you get all the goodies that you get with Cherry Audio, you know, the presets. Of course, you can save and store and do favorites. And, of course, all the options that you have right here at the bottom, at the top, they are just pretty standard for pretty much all the synthesizers on the Cherry Audio line. But that's, you know, pretty much the whole synth. So hopefully you liked all of this. You learned something on this one. And remember, of course, to like and subscribe. And if you liked it and you want to buy me a coffee, you can check on the description. You have a link to link for Patreon. You have PayPal. You have YouTube Thanks. So you have a lot of options. All right. So hopefully all of this just helped you and you liked it. And see you on the next one.